only a group of people as stupid as the billionaire class could identify all of the symptoms and then come up with a wrong diagnosis. Check this out and I'll be right back.
If you own assets, like we do, the four of us, we own stocks, we own real estate, we own other assets. As the dollar devalues and everything inflates in value, our asset prices go up and we get wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. The majority of Americans do not own assets. They are net asset negative. As a result, they live off of income and they do not benefit from the de-dollarization like asset holders do. And this is what is ultimately fueling populism in the United States. And the populism in the United States is what is driving socialism. And the response to those behaviors is what Donald Trump elected to some degree. And the response to the Donald Trump actions is what's driving the civil unrest in Minnesota and other places. And I fundamentally believe that much of the unrest, the civil unrest, and ultimately this divide in this country is driven by the fact that de-dollarization, because of excess government spending, ultimately leads a majority of people in this country to feeling oppressed and left behind because they're seeing a few people in the country accelerate their net worth, like all of us here, and there's no way for them to catch up because they don't actually own assets. So I'll be honest with you guys and make a confession. I was at the gym this morning on the treadmill, and while I was there, I was actually thinking about the wealth tax stuff that's going on in California, and I wonder if it may be an inevitability in order to keep the United States from going into civil war. I mean that very wholeheartedly. Like, I just don't know if there's a way of solving this fiscal problem without a functional redistribution of wealth. And the question is, can you do it violently or non-violently? And if there's a non-violent path, I think that's probably the preferable path.
So what you saw right there is a group of billionaires on, of course, a podcast, because that's the thing that all the mediocre white dudes are doing these days, are talking about the ever-increasing disparity between the haves and the have-nots. And what's interesting about the diagnosis that they make is that they point to all of the potential societal issues that can come out of this. And this is in light of Sam Altman getting attacked. It's happening during the same time warehouses are being set on fire. They can identify all of these problems that are caused by wealth inequality. And then they make the statement that the reason why this is happening is because of government spending. Now, I will give them credit that they're not fully off base when they say that. Government spending is the problem. What they fail to realize is that government spending in terms of corporate welfare and billionaire handouts is why we are where we are. That's the problem. And every single billionaire fails to admit that they are the problem. In fact, when you think about all of the things that the billionaire class and the millionaire class gets away with, that's a massive contributing factor to why there's such a disparity between the 1% and everybody else. These people have rigged the game and are manipulating it left, right, and center, and they're stealing in plain sight, but refuse to admit it. So their solution is to reduce government spending, which is the root cause of what's happening right now. When they say reduce government spending, it means reducing regulation, destroying the agencies that actually watch and regulate and control their behavior. It means screwing with the tax code so they can accumulate more while the rest of us have little to nothing that we can get by. And it just doesn't stop with public policy. It's happening in the stock market too. Check this out and I'll be right back.
Hi, everyone. If you've had questions about whether or not there's market manipulation happening, wait until you hear the facts surrounding what happened in the markets on Friday. At around 8:20 Eastern Time on Friday, there were 760 million short positions purchased in oil. A short position is one that will benefit if the price drops. At the same time, there was a sudden surge in S&P 500 futures volume and 325 million long positions were purchased. And these are positions that will benefit when the price goes up. And about 20 minutes later, Iran's foreign minister announced that the Strait of Hormuz was declared completely open. Markets opened and oil prices proceeded to drop significantly, and the S&P 500 surged to an all-time high by roughly noon. Experts estimate that whoever made these trades made roughly 70 million on the oil short positions and 50 million on the S&P 500 futures. Bets of this magnitude, timed so perfectly, do not happen by chance. And my 2 cents is that this represents the largest insider trading and market manipulation example in my lifetime. And because there's no indication that this will be investigated, we can expect this type of activity to continue, and it will only add to the risk and volatility of investing.
So what you saw right there is just one example of many that have happened since the Trump regime has been in office that indicates that the wholesale theft that's been industrialized coming out of the Oval Office in manipulating the markets so that insiders can get rich. And it's not the rank and file people that are actually doing this stuff. It's billionaires and millionaires who are making bets on the market and stealing from everyday citizen as they make off with millions, if not billions of dollars. That sort of behavior exists with every commodity that you can think of. Here's an example of them manipulating insider knowledge to make a mint from the oil sector.
So I want to explain to you the damage that this causes to the average American, because people don't understand this. This is what they're not getting. This is not what a chart is supposed to look like. All of these huge crashes come moments after a bunch of trades and upon an announcement. This is total insider trading. And someone asked, like, how does that hurt me though? Like, everyone always thinks about just how it hurts them individually. Well, if you have a 401k or any type of retirement account or a pension or anything like that, it hurts you a lot. You just don't see it yet. I modeled a 401k with a total value of $200,000 currently today with a normal average exposure to energy stocks at 5%. Over the life of that 401k, all of this right here will reduce the value of that 401k at the end of its life by over $100,000. And that's sort of the genius of this market manipulation. You don't see the negative impact right now happening in front of your face. But the losses that are occurring now to pension funds and 401ks and IRAs and any retirement accounts are compounded over time. So just to be very clear, this right here is going to cause losses in the hundreds of billions of dollars for retirees in about 20, 25 years from now. That's the damage it causes.
Now, what we learn from all of these instances of rampant theft that's going on within this regime is that whether they get caught or not, the damage is already done, and we're the ones that are actually going to be paying for it. And this has been a consistent pattern with Republican regimes from the Nixon administration going forward. And when we look at just the Trump regime, there are so many different instances of theft and corruption that's going on that it's going to take decades to prosecute everything that's happened. And there's going to be people that slip through the cracks, and that's what they're banking on. Because when you think about the grift that's happening within this regime and within the people that are contributing to this regime, the list is long and wide in terms of who's all benefiting. You have companies like Meta and Amazon and Oracle who have all heavily contributed to the regime. And they've gotten contracts and let-offs when it comes to punishment for egregious crimes that they've committed. You've got Elon Musk, who donated millions of dollars to get the guy elected, and then he won billions of dollars in terms of government contracts. That is a quid pro quo if I've ever seen one. You have people like Howard Lutnick, who's in this regime as the Commerce Secretary, who convinced Trump and Republicans that tariffs by executive order are perfectly fine and shouldn't damage anybody. And now, with the Supreme Court ruling that the tariffs were illegal, which we knew they would be, guess what's happening? All of that money collected from tariffs is being refunded to the businesses. And who paid those tariffs in the end? It was the consumer that paid. So the rank and file amongst us, who aren't in the 1%, basically subsidized a windfall for big business. And you know who else benefited from it? Howard Lutnick and his family. Howard Lutnick was the former CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, and Cantor Fitzgerald set up a nice little scheme where they would front the money to companies if they couldn't afford to pay the tariffs, and if there was any sort of refund, Cantor Fitzgerald would keep the money from the refund. So they made money coming and going. And those are just a few examples of how the Republican corruption machine makes all of us poorer. If we wanted to dig in to where all the waste, fraud, and abuse exists within government, it's with this sort of stuff. It's the inside trading, the double dealing that's happening within this regime and across the political spectrum that makes each and every one of us poorer. Just with this regime, when you look at the deals that they've made with Saudi Arabia, with Qatar, with payoffs and pardons that they've issued for sex traffickers, financial criminals, people that were funding dark websites that allowed for human trafficking, there is a mile-long list of criminality that's happening in plain sight, and we are all paying the price for it. And the problem with all of that is that under any normal circumstances, this would be an administration killer. But keep in mind, this is an administration that's also neck deep in child trafficking and child sex abuse, rape and human trafficking, and they haven't faced a single bit of consequences. This points at a fundamental cancer that exists within this society. And the billionaire class refuses to admit it or shine a light on it because they're largely the ones that are perpetrating those crimes. Whether we're talking about criminality from the perspective of insider trading, financial manipulation, or if we're talking about criminality in terms of trafficking and abuse, the billionaires are all over those rackets. And that's what this is. What we're dealing with and what we're seeing over and over again is that this is a criminal enterprise that is in control. The Republican Party is nothing more than a mob, and Trump is the mob boss who's doling out favors and looking the other way in exchange for his protection. And if we want any of this stuff to get fixed, step one needs to be prosecuting and stripping everyone in the billionaire class of every single dime that they have as a starting point for the reparations that they owe the American public. But you and I both know that when it comes to rich people, and particularly the billionaire class and the millionaire class, they get away with everything. But when it comes to us trying to dodge a parking ticket, that's a no-go. That's a red line. And because of that dynamic, because of all of the rampant theft that's going on in plain sight, now you understand why billionaire CEOs are being targeted. Now you understand why warehouse buildings are bursting into flames. And you'll have to excuse me if I'm not sad about any one of those things happening. And it's going to continue until real accountability shows up for the billionaire class. Because one way or another, they're going to be made to pay. It's just a question of how moderate a payment plan are they going to be put on.